just imagine that you are right now in front of God and He's asking you if you have lived your life to the fullest. And what will be your answer? See, I was in the similar situation few years back, but when I opened my eyes, I was in front of doctors and I was ready to get operated. In that very moment, I asked the same question to myself. Have I lived my life to the fullest? And the answer was dead no. See, I always had dream of becoming an entrepreneur and serving this great country, India. But over the period, I kept postponing my dream, waited for the wake-up call. There is a myth about being extraordinary. We believe, for the longest period of my life, I believed that being extraordinary is maybe part of luck, maybe it's born talent or some born gift, maybe having 6 fingers on hand. How many of you can touch your nose with your tongue like this? So even I can't. So maybe that kind of gift, if you're born with, then you can perhaps be extraordinary, is what I used to believe. But over the period, life taught me the otherwise. So the truth is, extraordinary is not about having some born gift, but it is about the everyday struggles, everyday situations, using them in proper way and converting them into something remarkable. That is what extraordinary is all about. So I'll come back to my journey. So this is me in the photo. I have more weird photos also, but this is the best I can represent here. So this was me after my accident. It was actually in Kerala where my wife, my son, we were traveling on a family picnic. See, I was always an adventurous person. I never used to go in a straight line. I used to jump, climb, used to do all those things. I was doing adventure sports, firefox, and suddenly I noticed that the harness was not tied up and I fell from the height of almost 40 feet. I broke my eye socket. I had multiple skull injuries, but because of presence of mind of my wife, I literally got my life back. During that period, maybe after 2 days in the hospital bed, I realized my awakening and everything, whatever you can call it. And I asked my wife, what is the thing that I missed in my life? And I told her that being entrepreneur, starting my own business is what I missed completely. That was the tipping point of my journey. For any wake-up call and take actions right now, today, with whatever tools you have. So here I come to my first lesson, that life is unpredictable. Don't let your dreams be unpredictable. Don't wait for a wake-up call. Take action now with whatever tools, whatever resources you have. And most importantly, unlike me, you don't have to wait for any accident. There are multiple biographies that you can read and you can decide your course of action. So it is always better to learn from others' mistakes than making your own. So with that, I'll talk about Mahatma Gandhi ji. So imagine there was one ordinary TC in South Africa. He sees one Indian, of course, with the skin color, traveling in first class, and what he does is he pushes him out of the train. That moment, this gritty person, what he does after that is he pushed the British intruders out of India. So extraordinary things come out of very ordinary moments, because the TC must have pushed several Indians in the past, but this gritty Indian took it otherwise. So extraordinary things can happen from any ordinary moment as well. Our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, he was selling tea on some railway station and doing very ordinary things, but throughout the period, through his unbelievable struggles, he reached to a position of becoming Prime Minister of India. See, it tells you that no situation or no person is too small and no dream is too big. Another person is Dhirubhai Ambani ji. See, he was son of a teacher working for a petroleum company, and then he owned his own petroleum giant, Reliance. Other person which doesn't need any introduction is our great Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. He was son of a very wealthy Lieutenant Shahaji Maharaj, and he could have easily spent his life without doing anything. There was no requirement of doing anything for him in his life, but he did for his people a lot, and he created his own empire. And he is the greatest example of being extraordinary. So what it tells us is your background does not matter from where you have come, and also it decodes a pattern that extraordinary is not about privilege, but it is all about resilience and vision. I'll come back to my experience again. After the accident, or I'll say before accident, I was a marathon runner, and post accident I was confined to a bed. But I did not give in to the frustration, and I started working on small wins. So how is I trained my mind, and I read a lot about health during this period. So there are mostly the 5 factors: your sleep, your water intake, your exercise, diet, and most importantly, mindfulness. These 5 factors matter a lot. And I did not set any massive goal for my recovery. Rather than that, I focused on a step at a day by day, I kept the thinking. So with that approach, I ran my first 1 kilometer after my recovery, and I was very emotional that time. That 1 kilometer led to 5 kilometers, those 5 kilometers led to 10 kilometers. I ran my first half marathon. So that was my journey from coming back from my accident, and it led to something bigger. Running was not only limited to my fitness, but it became the purpose. And with that, I started helping many others with building their own health and fitness, and which gave birth to my first startup, which was FitQ. With FitQ, I actually helped a lot of corporates pan-India. See, alone exercise is not helpful. With that, you also require diet, and that gave birth to Yummy Calorie. Through Yummy Calorie, I gave calorie counted, personalized salads at the doorsteps. Ventures were doing superb. I was doing very good. But then suddenly the world changed, and what happened, I'll tell you. COVID came. And suddenly, with COVID, the world paused. Many businesses struggled, including mine. But I always believe that whatever challenges come, they come with a hidden opportunity in them. So this time, when this change happened, instead of fighting with that change, I decided to embrace it, and I ventured back into my corporate world again. Coming back to corporate world, initially I was feeling very different, because several years in entrepreneurship, and suddenly when you join the setup, where it is very structured and corporate kind of, you feel really weird. I mean, some of you can relate that when you come back to office after a maternity leave, you can imagine what phase you go through. So similarly, I came back, but this time I realized that I was having one thing which I was better than anybody else, and that was entrepreneurship. And that actually gave me an edge over others. So this time I joined a current company where I'm working with as head of marketing, but I am not looking at the job like a regular corporate person, but I'm looking at that company as if it is my own. And that gives me extra edge in my job. Failure is just a setback, or it's just a few pages in your book. It's not the whole book, and any setback can be taken as a setup for a greater cause. So you can remember that. So my vision to becoming an extraordinary marketer. So next lesson is think like an entrepreneur in your job. So thing is, I come across multiple corporates focused on their job descriptions. Don't. That's a big mistake. As a marketer, consider it as your own business, and think about how you can grow the scale of the brand, how you can increase the revenue for the company, how you can create strategies which can disrupt the category. So think about all those aspects. Second important lesson is continuous learning. So when I joined back, I understood that any marketer has to keep evolving. With that, I took up an online digital marketing course with ISB, Indian School of Business, and I did fairly well. I studied very hard, and most importantly, which is my next lesson, is you don't have to keep that learning to yourself. You have to spread that learning. The best way to learn anything or master anything is to spread that learning to your colleagues, to your fraternity, and that is most important thing. With that thought, I published a book on Digital Revolution, the future of marketing. It talks about the physical world and the digital world and how you can amalgamate both of them. By God's grace, I sold around 200 copies of the book within the first 2 months of launch itself. I'll tell you, this is one book which is Alchemist, which I really love, by Paulo Coelho. Ordinary story of one ordinary shepherd boy who transforms into extraordinary alchemist. What he does in that story is goes through lot of rough patches, but he keeps moving ahead in search of his treasure. So just like that shepherd boy, my story doesn't end here. What I believe is there are more goals to be achieved, there are more dreams to follow, and there are more treasures waiting to be found. With that, extraordinary is not only about being different, but it's all about being relentless. So take small steps, baby steps. The fastest way to reaching anywhere is going very slow. So take very small steps. Any setback that you get, think about it as a setup for a greater good. In our lives, please believe, if it is ordinary life, there lies some potential for making it very, very extraordinary. So with that, I leave you with one very important question, and you have to answer that to yourself, not to anybody else. What was that single moment in your life which you believe that had something that can create or that can give birth to something extraordinary? So this is all for you to think about and answer yourself. Thank you.